All right, we're going to get into some feelings here and the levels of human consciousness. And I want to explain how they're so closely connected and why it's so important to understand the levels of human consciousness along your healing journey. It really helps you to get to know yourself better. And if you feel that you already know yourself 100%, then this isn't for you. And I feel that that's kind of foolish, because there's always something new to learn about ourselves. We need to be open-minded on the healing journey. That is important. And we need to assess what we're feeling. We know on a surface level immediately what we're feeling. We know when we're angry, we know when we're happy, we know when we're sad. We know these feelings, we feel it. But oftentimes, certain feelings are masking lower levels of human consciousness. And our thoughts, our behaviors, and our level of awareness is dependent upon where we're toggling in the levels of human consciousness. It's a toggle. We're never at one space all the time, because life is about ebb and flow. So we're gonna go up and down the scale of human consciousness with ebb and flow depending on what we're experiencing in our lifetime. And when we talk about the healing journey, it's important to be at a level of courage. When you're at a level of courage, that says, okay, I'm ready to do the work. I'm sick of this and I'm ready to do the work. Otherwise, we're kind of stuck at a place of pride. And pride is closely knit with ego, where there's some blinders on, there's closed-mindedness. You're not realizing that you're your own problem. And that is a huge wake-up call. And it hurts the ego a little bit when you realize that, oh, shit, I'm the fucking problem, but I've been blaming everybody else and everything else around me. We need to take a hard look at our own self first. And this is part of the process. And so when we look at pride, where it is closely knit with ego, right below pride is desire. And desire oftentimes is unhealthy, right? This is a time to explore, why am I not ready to take that step of courage? What part of my ego is standing in my way? And what desires are not healthy, are not working for me, that I need to release? Because without releasing it, those desires are going to pull you down into lower levels of human consciousness, which is fear and anger. And that's where we get into depression and anxiety. We fall. So certain life situations can happen. You're really prideful. There's friction, there's triggers, and then boom, your desires are not fulfilled. And then you get into anger, you get into fear, and then you pull down into lower levels, which is shame, guilt, grief, apathy, which is very dangerous at those lower levels. Anger, I just want to talk about for a minute, just because each level of human consciousness has its own vibrational energy, right? So this is important. Like when you're of high vibration and you're feeling good, you're up at a higher level of vibrational energy, a higher level of consciousness. And when you have in a situation and you break down and you're angry and you fall and you feel a little bit of guilt, you feel a little bit of grief, we've all felt it, then you can feel the heaviness in your energy. This is the levels of human consciousness. And so anger, for a person who's faced with depression or anxiety, you are able to function in society and go to work and deal with your kids and deal with your family and deal with your friends and deal with your coworkers and deal with whoever else you have to deal with in your life, because anger has enough energy to have you cope and keep moving on a daily basis. There's enough anger, which means there's enough energy to put and suppress those lower levels of human consciousness down, so you can put on your prideful ego mask and go out into the world and live. But that's not your truth. Because behind closed doors, you're feeling those lower levels of human consciousness. Now, this is if it applies to you. And so we want to recognize that. not in self-sabotage, but recognize it. So I believe in celebrating every little bit of success. So if this is you and you feel that bit of anger and you know that that's masking some deeper feelings that you're not ready to work through, but we got to start, just being at least aware of them, then be thankful that you have that level of anger, because that's what's keeping you going, for you to actually be able to rise up above that, break the pride, and reach a place of courage. Because if you don't have that anger, anyone who is not angry enough because they're so stuck in the lower levels, that's where it gets very dangerous and you can't even function in life. You're not able to get to work. And that's where we fall, or a person can fall into suicide. For those of you that aren't experiencing those lower levels of human consciousness, and you might still be with me on this video, I hope that this understanding at least enables you to have some compassion for the next human soul who is facing a battle that you just don't know nothing about, because it's being masked with a level of pride, and it's being fueled by anger underneath it to be able to cope with everyday life and the suppressed emotions that lie beyond that, to just be able to cope in everyday life. So it's important to, as you can see, really start to assess what you're feeling and understand where you're toggling on the levels of human consciousness. So you understand where you're at, right? We got to understand where we're at now, so we know what we got to start working on. And we really want to work on just one thing at a time. Again, the healing shouldn't overwhelm you if you're doing it and approaching it and intending it in the right way. So you want to intend it with awareness, and you also want to intend it with working on just one thing at a time. But understanding where you're at, right? This is all about self-discovery. So what I encourage you to do is to go to my YouTube channel under the Levels of Human Consciousness playlist and start going through and watching the content and just reflecting on each level in regards to where you're at and what you're feeling. So you know where you're at, you know where you're balancing, you're starting to understand where it's stemming from, the root cause, so you can start to determine, okay, what's that one thing that I want to start working on?